Right, so fingers crossed, everything's live. We are all for United. It's going to be an interesting one today. We've got Mr. Wall and Mr. Commode. We're going to be looking back at the Newcastle game. We're going to be looking forward to the Chelsea game. And then we are going to be discussing everything that's happened in between, which is absolutely loads, if we're honest. It's been an interesting week, as much as it's been a frustrating week for everybody. So we'll start with you, Andrew. What did you make of the Newcastle game? Like, obviously, we don't really want to talk about it, but we've got to.
Yes.
Was it the worst performance of the season? Where do you think it went wrong? Who do you think should shoulder most of the blame? Was the team selection wrong? Is it more on the players? I've got an interesting question to ask you both later, which is something that's been frustrating me. But fire away, Andy. What did you make of the game?
It probably was definitely the worst performance of the season so far. I'm hoping there's not another. That was our rock bottom of performances. I hope there's not another level down to that. So I just think just shocking, disgrace of a performance from the United. There's a few players that can, hold their heads above the parapet, but I just say we just got outworked, outfought and outclassed in the game. And you could see from the very first couple of minutes, Newcastle's high press was going to be a problem for us. And I think even other teams and other managers, you put the United team under pressure and we start to crumble. And I'm like, we've got to get away from, that. We've got to be more in control of our games, which I know Ten Hag's trying to implement, but maybe it's going to be after a slightly different way against those other teams that will do that to us. And I felt like the performance was a bit of a, for those that had travelled to Newcastle on it, which was a bitterly cold night, it was 8,000 of us, I think 8,000 missed out on getting a ticket to the game. So those 3,000 that got there, I'm just thinking you went all the way to see that, and it just at least the minimum you expected from the players was some effort, to track back and to run, just show that you care. And you just for whatever reason, the majority of the players didn't even do that. So I know we're probably going to discuss, individual performances during that happened during the game, but just thinking, Newcastle just they showed us everything that we wanted to be and more. So that's how we should be doing that to Newcastle, the way they played against us. And it's just, I know we hit in first half. I think we did have a couple of chances, and if we took those, we would have gone 1-0 ahead. But Newcastle would just getting down the left and right side, and it just overload after overload. And it's probably thanks to Anara points that he wasn't there. We went down by a few goals at half time. I mean, second half, just the defending for the goal as well. I'm just thinking Aaron Wan-Bissaka caught the back post for the goal. So, well, not just him, the whole defence and from the midfield as well. But I thought when we got back into it and scored that equaliser, and I thought I literally cheered and I was like, yes, we're back in it. And then unfortunately Maguire was offside, and I was like, just our luck. I've just thought we just snatched something from the game, which we didn't look like we was going to do anyway. But it feels like we go one step forward and then 2 steps back at the moment. It's just, I feel like there's just a bit of, there's no light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. It's just I'm always trying to remain optimistic with United and thinking things will get better. And it's just at the moment, it's a bit hard to see at the moment.
Yeah, it's frustrating for me because it was something like 5 wins out of 6 going into the Newcastle game. There was stepping stones, and we was looking like we could start to put some stuff together, and it just falls off a cliff. It just randomly falls off a cliff again, and we throw in a performance like that.
And it's during November, well, we won the 3 league games, and Ten Hag's been named, one of the managers can be manager of the month for November. I'm like, it's just those 3, and then it's those 3 games that we've had. Everton the win, Galatasaray the draw, and now a loss. It's
even the performances in some of the games have been to. There's a building brick here. We can push on a little bit. Even the Galatasaray one, as frustrating it was, there was stuff in that game where I thought we can build on this. That looked good. And then the performance against Newcastle, I can take nothing away from the Newcastle game and think we can build on that. It was literally awful from minute 1 to minute 85 until we started putting a bit of effort in. It was just the way they sat off, the way there seemed to be a lack of effort. And like, as you rightly said, the overload for Newcastle down the left and down the right was just ridiculous. I've had several discussions about it, and we'll come on to it later. But the effort from the team as a whole is just not there for me. It's not one player, it's not two players, it's 11. I feel sorry for Rashford in a way. We'll talk about Rashford a bit later, but he's took a lot of the blame. I see Martial's taking a big chunk of the blame. Not played a lot this season. Done well in the games he's come in. Yes, he was poor against Newcastle. But we've got so many players just bang out of form or just not at it in that game. It's almost impossible to have so many players not up for a game of football all at the same time. I find it baffling that 9 of the 11 have walked out onto that pitch, maybe 8, and just not give anything.
I was going to say, and just to add on that, I think I read somewhere somebody said it was like watching a bottom half team play, as in us, and we were like second to the ball on everything. Yeah. Just not a major single and just very like I see it, and it's like strange after the midweek display against Galatasaray, we scored 3 and scored 3 against Everton, but we didn't even look close to scoring a goal against Newcastle, and
no, there was nothing.
That's a bit of a problem, and don't want to say if Ten Hag doesn't sort of address it soon enough, then
we will definitely be discussing that.
The pressure's going to probably start to build even more. But let's say, I have my view on that. Who won?
Luton won. Arsenal won. Right, John, Mr. Camo, you. What did you make of the game? I'm assuming you was not impressed like us.
No.
Where went wrong?
Pardon?
Where do you think it went wrong?
Where did it go wrong? Well, it started to go wrong when the flight was cancelled and they had to travel on a bus. I mean, it was a very lackluster performance, and it probably was the worst performance this season in terms of lack of effort and that. Okay, you can maybe, how can you excuse it? I mean, obviously we had a tough away trip to Turkey on Wednesday. That probably would have had a factor in it. It's 3 very difficult away games, so it was perhaps 1 too many away games perhaps, but I just think you look at some of the players. What I do question is there were certainly some players where there was lack of effort. Rashford most notably, he had a week off and he could have easily have shown a bit more fire in that, but his fire's dummy out. We didn't help his fullback Wan-Bissaka. I think a lot of the players, I wouldn't say it was lack of effort. I just think they're not capable of playing better. That's the thing. We didn't have control in the midfield. We had Paul Mainu, 18-year-old, did his best, and that McTominay just is not capable of controlling the game, or Bruno. And this is where I question Bruno as a captain. Surely he should see Mainu struggling. Whatever, if it's tactics to continue press forward, then fine, but that's on the manager. But surely as an experienced player like Bruno and even like McTominay, surely you should say, right, I'm going to step back a bit and give Mainu a bit of support to try and get some control in the midfield. And that for me was where we lost it more than anything, that you control matches in the midfield and we're just not capable of doing it. And as much as it's frustrating, when have we ever controlled midfield over the last few years? Probably the closest.
Louis Van Gaal.
Yeah, exactly. And we said it was boring football, but at least we were keeping hold of the ball, and this kind of thing. And, we didn't win many games or score many goals, but at least we had a degree of control. Now it's like this reckless side. I think the reason Solskjaer did well was that he did have the pivot. Now, I'm not saying Fred and McTominay were great. I personally didn't we should have had an upgrade on them, but at least, you know, it was defensively solid in there up until, you know, the last couple of months under Solskjaer. But for me, it's where we've got to learn that you got to get people to run. I honestly think we miss Fred more than what people will think, because he might not control it, but he'll run for you and he'll control. And there was always that, well, you get a good Fred or a bad Fred, but you know, when Fred is good, he'll help you midfield and he'll win you important games, you know, and that. So for me, he's a big miss, bigger miss than what people will care to imagine. However,
I think it's care to admit as well. Do you not think, John?
Pardon?
It's a bigger miss than people would care to admit.
Yeah. And if I had the choice between selling him and McTominay, I would have sold McTominay. We would have got more money for him. We could have spent more money on transfers, and it's pure profit as well, being from the academy. And you know, McTominay, he does score goal. I mean, he rescued us against Brentford. He scored against Sheffield United and scored in midweek. But you know, what else does he bring? That's a big problem. You don't look at McTominay and say lack of effort. I don't look at him as lack of effort. I just don't think he's capable of playing better. There's a difference.
Yeah, he's been at his level.
Yeah.
And that is his level. He's never going to get better than what he is.
Level. He's never going to be capable of playing for it. He'll never start regularly for a team who's going to be winning the league. You know, whereas Rashford, you look at him and he is capable of playing better. So what's the matter with him? And you know, I've been reading his. When he was I've looked at what some people said. You know, because he muttered something under his mouth when he came off, and he said 2 cents. I don't know what the second was. I'm pretty sure the first one was, why the F am I here? You know, and I just think it's probably the first time I can recall in the media where they have started to really question Rashford. And that's possibly the kindest possible way what he might need, because you know, Carragher's saying, well, he's like Martial, you know, and that kind of thing. And I think you got to look at this. I don't think Garnacho, he's 18 years old or 19, you know, he's like me, he's developing. He will have games where he's bad. I don't look at him and think lack of effort. Okay, maybe didn't help his fullback as much, but he's got to learn the ropes. Rashford is a very experienced footballer, but he just didn't have the effort. Wan-Bissaka, as Andrew mentioned, he was continually out of position. It was ridiculous. And Dalot playing at left back. I mean, he let Trippier cross that ball, winning goal. It was ridiculous. And, you know, fair play to Shaw and Maguire, because I think without them it would have been embarrassing. That being said, is one game. It was a bad performance. You know, if you look at it, we won 5 out of 6 before then. It's now 5 out of 7. So losing one game is not catastrophic. So you got.
Well, we don't seem to be able to draw as well, do we? So.
Exactly. So I think that, you know, you can maybe take the last 10, 15 minutes where we did start to press and that. And, you know, I personally look at starting that team again. You know, the game that we finished, that team that finished the game, that might be the team you look to start against Chelsea, possibly. So for me, this is where it went wrong. It was probably an away game too many. Lack of effort from the team again. I think you've got to raise question marks about whether the Rashford should have a break on the sidelines for a few games. And for once, maybe Anthony has looked decent the last couple of games, so it might be worth putting him on. And you know, he will support his fullback. That's one thing Anthony does well. He does support his fullback. So for me, it might be worth looking at that. But that being said, it's one game, terrible performance. You know, we won't take much from it, but you got to look forward now, and you know, we got a big game. What I would say is, people say, oh, we're doomed to lose against Chelsea, which we might do, but I don't think the Old Trafford crowd will put up with another performance like that. So
well, that's something I want to come on to later.
So for me, I do think you will have a bit of improvement tomorrow night.
Well, honestly, John, I don't see how it could be any worse from what we watched. I
No,
mean,
exactly.
I agree with your point. The last sort of 5-10 minutes, we started to look a little bit better,
Yeah.
but I don't think that was more down. It's difficult.
I think they started
Yeah,
tired as well.
they took their foot off the pedal. They'd gone, right, we'll take the 1-0 at 85 minutes, and that when we started to get chances. I was fortunate enough to realise that Maguire was offside, so I didn't even celebrate. I was hoping he didn't touch it, or he wasn't, and it didn't hit him. But yeah, so I didn't celebrate. We'll move on a little bit. Obviously, we touched on Rashford there, so we'll keep the Rashford conversation going, Andy, because this one has been brewing for weeks for me. And I'll bang the drum again that I always bang about form mattering and making a difference. Now, for me, Rashford can't play the right. It's obvious he can't play on the right. He's not very useful from the right. He doesn't like playing on the right. So that should, in my opinion, lead to a straight shot between Garnacho and Rashford on the left. And you pick one. Do you think it's now time that Rashford... I see what John's saying in terms of dropping him out and giving him a bit of time on the sidelines. I think that should be done for form, surely. Garnacho's playing better than he is. Rashford's out of form. Surely it's time that he's dropped.
It's a difficult one, Marcus. He sort of, well, if he's not on the pitch, he can't get back into form. But then when he's on the pitch, he's not been performing so well. I'm just thinking, well, because he didn't play against Galatasaray, so he had literally a week's rest from Everton to Newcastle, but he literally offered nothing. I think he had one cross during the game, that was it, and just didn't look interested, and and also he wasn't refusing to track back, and throwing his hands up in the air and arms, and looking at other players and blaming them. It wasn't, well, other players were doing it to each other as well, but that display, it's like from Rashford, you won't want to see him starting any time again soon, but it's weird one with Rashford. I've sort of want to see him getting back into form, and I think the sort of more damning statement was from Roy Keane on yesterday after the City Spurs game, comparing Rashford to Martial. I was like, there was no movement, just nothing, and I'm like, I thought that's not good. And I think because we hold Rashford in such high regard, and he's a local lad as well. So I think Jamie Carragher was saying it Sunday as well. He said, when you've been a local player and when the team's not doing well, it's your job to fix it, and you've got to drag all the other players with you as well. So
don't you think we lack leaders though? Like I understand that point of view. I agree with it in a way, but Man City ain't got any local lads in their team. It may be Foden, but Foden don't drag them across the line, does he? Bernardo Silva from Portugal and he drags them.
Rico Lewis.
But what I'm saying is these players don't drag them to the finish line, do they? Like the other players do it for them because they're proud professionals. So it's all good and say, oh, Marcus is from Manchester, he should pull us over the line. If he's not in form, we need someone else to pull us over the line.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at that squad, I can, besides Bruno and Harry Maguire, I can't see any, but they all being leaders, but they all should be leaders on the pitch. And I know Marcus cares, but sometimes that's not enough. You've got to put some effort in, and you look at him last season, he hits, I think all those goals he scored, and then he was given that contract, but with that contract comes, more expectations of him, and obviously he's just, stumbling at the moment, and you just question, his commitment at the moment, which I know he's fully behind and wants to give his best for the club, and it's just, I think maybe a period on the bench will do him some good, but I just don't know whether Ten Hag will, maybe he's thinking keeping him on the pitch, we'll get back into form, but at some point...
one for John, then.
So
this I just want to touch on this. I totally agree with what you're saying, and I'm not bagging on Foden at all. I think he's a brilliant footballer. He's going to be top quality as well. I think he's going to step up another level. What I'm saying is if Foden does it. Sorry, if Foden doesn't sprint back to get the ball, somebody else is going to go and fetch it for him because they're a team. They're a proper team of players. There's no individuals in that team. There are like Silva, but they work for the team before they work for themselves. And I think that can definitely be labelled at Manchester United. There's players in our squad that aren't prepared to work for the team, but they're happier to work for themselves. And we see, I've complained about it for weeks in terms of we get in 3-on-1 and we're not playing the extra pass because it's like, I have to score. It's important that I get the goal. So what about you, John? Do you think it's time? Do you think Rashford surely is had enough chances now? Surely we go a different route and take him out of the limelight and see if he can, if he earns his place back by coming off the bench and doing something.
Yeah, I think so. He's not helping the team. And I think if you were to pick, his best team to win a game at the moment, I'm not sure he gets in it. And I think that, I do agree with Andy, you can't get into form when you're not playing, but you're not helping the team when you're on it if you're out of form. So, it's so for me, it's also one other thing with Rashford. There's 2 games he hasn't played in this season. Palace in the League Cup, Galatasaray away. What do they have in common? We scored 3 goals in each of them, and we could have potentially scored more. So, yes, you can say, oh, who's going to get the goals? But in actual fact, you look at it and think, I know it's a small sample, but 2 games where he hasn't played, we have scored, and perhaps we looked at a better team going forwards when it's happened. So, and plus, I think also with Anthony, he's had a lot of criticism and all that, but one of the reasons I don't mind Anthony is that he does provide a bit more balance to the team when he does play, even though he might not do much. He does support his fullback more, and plus he's the only left-footed winger that we have. And that I know he does. People say he doesn't use his right foot, which is a rightful criticism. But you look at him now and you think Galatasaray and against Newcastle, he looks decent and that he nearly scored a goal. Galatasaray was one of his best performances, I think, in the United shirt. So maybe now he is starting to develop a bit of form, and I think he perhaps should be rewarded for that. Garnacho, as we know, has scored a couple of goals recently, so he's starting to look better. And Martial, he shouldn't play. We need to get rid of him, whether that be January or when his contract ends in the summer. He did well at Everton, but we know what we're getting with Martial. Højlund is the future. You go and support the ball into the box with them and that. So I think that's the way to go. And I think whenever we have scored goals recently, but I think that we need to start being more ruthless and that. And I think Bruno has started to look a bit better in terms of creating chances and that kind of thing. I just think we need to sort the midfield out. I think I can understand why I was picking McTominay after the Brentford game because we weren't scoring many goals and he was capable of game one and in helping us to get a win. But now it's like we are scoring goals and he's not necessarily he's not doing his job off the ball or in the midfield. It's like the only thing that you're picking for is score goals. I think now it's come to the point where you need more balance in midfield. Mainu, as we know, looks good. And then I think you got to try and go with him and Amrabat,
that's what I was thinking as well.
Stability in midfield. So for me, this is where we need to go. And I think I'd go with that for a few games. I know we got the Anfield game coming up, which, as we know, is a massive, massive worry. And that's before we play the Bayern Munich game. And just looking ahead, I personally would, if I was sent out, what's my best team to play at Anfield? Don't play any of them in the Bayern Munich game at all and focus on preparing them for that Liverpool game. That's the only way you might get a result, but let's be honest, it's pretty faint. Whereas for me, just go with that. Go with Anthony, go with Hoyland, and go with Garnacho, because I don't think Rashford's helping the team at the moment.
Yeah. Well, Andy wants to make one more point about Rashford, and then we'll move on to Ten Hag, because there's been a few questions in the chat about Ten Hag, so it's something that we're going to talk about. So we'll let Andy make his last point on Rashford, and then we'll move on to that.
Yeah, I was going to just add on Rashford. Yeah, things haven't been easy from on the pitch. You know, he's only scored twice in the Premier League, you know, since, you know, he signed that new deal. And obviously the second was that penalty against, you know, Everton, which Bruno handed to him, which was a bit of a surprise because everybody thought Bruno was going to take the penalty. So I don't know whether he just handed it to Marcus, you know, to give him that confidence. And to be fair, Rashford scored. It's just other parts of his game have not, you know, benefited from it, you know, as well. So across the season so far, but as you mentioned, when he's played out on the right, he's struggled to be effective. You know, it's not something new. He's better off the left or maybe going through the middle. And I think that this season he's been averaging like 120 minutes before he gets a shot on target, which from the coach's point of view, they're going to be more worried about that. It's just because if he was getting the chances and missing them, so but it's literally the amount of time he's taking to even get a shot on target. And I'm just thinking he's not had things easy off the pitch as well. So I think there's all that furore and going to a nightclub after the Derby Day defeat, which didn't go down well. And Ten Hag said, I'll speak to him about that. But when he did score the goal against Everton, he dedicated that to his cousin who passed away. So he's saying, you know, he's going through a difficult spell, and we, you know, reflective it in many different ways. And I hope things will turn a corner. It's just another bump in the road for him, but I'm just hoping it doesn't, you know, his form does pick up, because if it doesn't, I feel like the fallout from it can be going to be a bit painful. And you could argue, well, that game against Newcastle was probably the moment where it all began to, you know, to come to the surface. And, you know, when he came off and whether he did say, what the am I doing here? But it's, just so, you know, maybe it's just putting an arm around him at the moment, and just, you know, just let's say, hopefully getting him back into some form, you know, and he starts scoring those goals for us, because we're in desperate need of some goals, especially in the league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it just comes down to form. I'm a massive believer in form, and if a player's out of form, and I said it about Maguire, I said it about Varane, I've said it about Shaw, Dallo, everybody pretty much. If you're out of form, you shouldn't be in the team. It's just the way it should be, because then you're leaving room for the players that are on the side to, or you know what, if he's out of form and he's actually going to be dropped, I've got a chance. There's a reason for me to train hard, to work, to everything else. So we'll move on to Ten Hag, because obviously it's been in the comment sections. Troy is not a fan. Failed experiment, as we saw last season at Crystal Palace. Should be fired immediately. Now, my personal opinion is I will back Ten Hag over the players now in the current climate, just for the simple fact some of these players have already chucked managers under the bus by slowing down. By when Solskjaer went, my love for a lot of these players went, and I don't want to see another manager be let down by the same players. And it's not necessarily any player in particular. I've seen a lot of people mention certain names like Rashford and Maguire, McTominay, etc. It's not necessarily they're the players I'm talking about. There's a mixture, but I think the club need to back Ten Hag and get rid of these players. If Ten Hag goes in tomorrow and says Rashford isn't, like this is an example, Rashford is not working hard enough to be at this football club, then we need to back that decision, because it's a tough decision and it's one that many fans probably won't want. They prefer Rashford back in form and scoring goals and working hard for the team, of course. But I have said it from pre-season, and you two can back me up on this. The second team played his tactics better than the first team. And I think that's what we saw going into the season, because he doesn't trust as many as the second team players, or they're not as big of names. He's sort of let the first teamers get away with it. So I read something with Solskjaer where he basically asked Fernandes to be a bit more like delicate with his runs, slow the play down a bit more. And Fernandez basically said, "Oh no, it's not my game. I want to take risks. I want to do this. I want to do that." And ultimately, you can't do that. If your manager's saying to you, "Look, you need to slow this game down for us," then you need to slow the game down for him. And I genuinely think that Ten Hag is asking some of these players to do stuff, and they can't do it. And it brings me on to some after, but we'll get your two's opinion first. So Andy, where do you sit in terms? In fact, sorry, we'll go John first. Where do you sit in terms of? Are you back in Ten Hag before you turn on him, or are you firmly in the players' corner? Or, and it's I'm going to chuck it out there because it's possible. Is it a bit of both?
Yeah, I think ultimately everybody has made mistakes ultimately, but I do agree. We've been there before, and he has bought a few of his own players, which haven't worked or certainly not worked yet. But there's still a lot of players who were there from Oliño's age and even Van Gaal's era. So players are suited to different styles of football. Van Gaal, there's no continuity with the managers we've employed in terms of like Van Gaal was very different to Mourinho. Mourinho's different to Oli. Oli's very different to Ten Hag. And you have the same, well, not quite the same, but a lot of the players who are still here have played under different managers. And for me, I've said for a while it's a dysfunctional team. It's been dysfunctional for a while, yes, and we did exceed expectation last year. I do think Ten Hag has made some mistakes, and he has said some things lately which have bemused me. I mean, saying that it wasn't that bad on Saturday, that kind of thing, and I think some of his selections are being questionable. But hey, I'm not the manager. But for me, that comment you brought up, yeah, he has failed. Well, every manager will fail under this ownership. It keeps going back to them. People might be fed up of hearing that, but it's true. If you have a club as owners only obsessed about money, the same will apply for the players. They think they've reached. We've had Nemanja Matic saying, I know Pogba's left now, but he's like players like him and Sancho.
Yeah,
always turned up late for training. They had a kitty where you pay a fine if you turn up late, and it was virtually every day. And it's like the squad have run themselves. And I think Oli did his best, but it was a terrible squad. Now a lot of those players, I think, who were troublesome have gone now, but some still remain. And that I think that you got honest about that. And I think we need a sporting control to occur. And I would say for those who think Ten Hag's not good enough, I think what you need to get right is if you are to sack Ten Hag, it's got to be done by football people who know what they're doing. And if they don't think Ten Hag is right, they've got to have a philosophy for a style play you want to play. And if you feel Ten Hag's not the right one, you got to think of someone, well, who's better then? And under that context, maybe at the end of the season or something, I would understand it in that context and that. So for me, that's what I would consider looking at doing if you feel that's the right thing to do. So for me, Ten Hag, he can't continue if he continues to pick certain players. I mentioned McTominay in midfield, or continuing to play Rashford in this form. I know he's had problems and all that, and God bless him. Now losing a relative will hurt us, and I think his brother's also been arrested in Florida as well. So it will be a difficult time for him, but. We've also laid to rest someone recently who lost all his friends in a plane crash, and it didn't. He could have easily have said, "I'm packing this in," but he became Mr. Manchester United instead of Bobby Charlton. So really, you should, if anything, it should raise your game. When you're going through a hard time, you need escapism, and I think football I played football when I lost someone, close to me. And it's kind of like that determination. I want to play for them kind of thing. And I think this is where I think while Rashford, while he is having a tough time, could he use that to put all that frustration he has off the field, put it onto the field and, try and play for them, the spirit of them kind of thing. That's what I would personally like for him to do. Does he need a break? Is he having mental health issues where he might need a break, much like Sancho last year? Possibly that might be something you might need to look at. So I think at this moment, picking him at this moment isn't good. And it's also a welfare issue as well as, not being good enough on the pitch potentially. But for me, in terms of Ten Hag, he needs to start picking players for him for me. Yes, managers have favourites, but you can't always depend on them. The whole Varane thing has been a bit bemusing, to be honest. And I think that we have a lot of fixtures this December, and I know we might think, oh, Varane is not for me, but Varane is still a very good defender, and I personally think you got to try and get him to play some games. You're going to need it. You're going to need your squad. And this is where he perhaps, the one criticism last season, he overplayed certain players. And I think that impacted towards the end of the season, certainly the start of this season. So for me, he's got to be better at use squad. Maguire has done well. He's been playing Lindelof. I know Varane hasn't played well, and I can see why he's been frozen out in terms of like when he has played. But let's be clear, Lindelof hasn't played well, but he has continued to pick him. So maybe you do need to change it up a little bit, and get Varane. Because you never know. We thought Maguire, his career was over, but now he's somehow re-emerged, and that through hard work. Maybe it's the same for Varane and, maybe other players. You need to start using your squad. And yes, you can have fallouts with players, but for me, you've got to start picking players. I don't think Varane, they probably had an argument or something. He might be off to Saudi, but I do think Varane, in fairness to him, would you question his professionalism? I don't think that's been a big problem for him in his career, so I don't see how it can be now. So for me, use your squad better, pick a team which is capable of winning games, playing to your style. And I think you mentioned this, Dan, previously, in terms of like, if you finish sixth, but you attempt to play the football you want to, that will go a long way, as opposed to grinding out results and maybe you might finish top four, but it might be boring as hell football. Sometimes you got to take the pill and just, if Ten Hag is to be the one, say, right, what do you need to do? And there needs to be a conversation with the sporting director when they come in. What is your philosophy, Eric? We're going to back you if we think that you're right. And I personally think he is right, Ten Hag, but you got to try and ride the storm and say, Eric, you're not helping yourself. You got to try and get results, try and get the style you want to, and we'll support you with bringing in players and getting rid of players which don't fit your system. That's what you need to do. But at this moment, I think everybody's future is uncertain at the moment.
So the comment section's got some really interesting points in it. I just want to touch on that before we go to Andy. So there's this one. He's basically raging at us. We're all making terrible points. So I just wanted to make a point here, and I don't know whether you two will agree. Postecoglou will have challenges with 4 or 5 more players. I can guarantee you the 4 or 5 players that Postecoglou wants would not be gone and got by that board. They would go and get him different players. They wouldn't get him the players that he wants. Just like with Solskjaer, just like with Mourinho, just like with Ten Hag. Ten Hag wanted Harry Kane and he ended up with Højlund. And I'm not saying Højlund's a bad player. I'm saying he wanted Harry Kane. And there's a big difference between Højlund and Harry Kane to your season. One of them will fire into top 4 and one of them is for the future. And then this one of players are better than Spurs. Why do you all keep using Ten Hag? Because no one's excusing saying that Ten Hag's
are
perfect.
they though?
But this is the point. So the Spurs players have shown they will run, and Postecoglou did something that Ten Hag hasn't done, in my opinion. And he came in and he got rid of Højbjerg, who was excellent for Spurs last season, and said, "Basuma, you're the one for me. You can play my system," and that's what he did. So yeah, I can see the point of view that some people would disagree with Ten Hag. There's one particular frustration I've got here, which I'll talk about after Andy puts his point across. And then we'll move on a little bit. So Andy, where do you think it's Ten Hag's issues is going forward? What do you think he's got to do?
I think the one thing probably we learnt before and probably during the Newcastle game and afterwards is this team needs so much more work, and I'm just thinking, feels like top to bottom we need to overhaul every position, and that's not going to be a quick process at all. And with the reported Jim Ratcliffe, deal coming very soon, well, seems like it is, but until it's actually announced.
Next week, Andy. Next week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was going to be this week, so next week it could be. I don't know. And say if he's going to be leading the football operations, then we might be seeing. I know several players leaving in January, but on the one hand, you can count players who deserve to be at the club right now, and they are showing the effort and they can, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I know, reports have come out saying, Ten Hag's lost the senior players in the dressing room. But then we've had that like before, over the years after Fergie left, the players are not happy with Van Gaal, Mourinho, Moyes, and, even Ollie at points, and Ragnick as well. But it's just like, Ten Hag said in his press conference today, he just said, a lot of rumours going around, but, it's just, we all have different opinions on everything, and said that the team is, is happy at the moment, we'll, if there's going to be a difference of opinion, then he said, "Oh, well, listen," he said, "they haven't told me." Well, he said that they haven't told me, but there may be one or two. So I'm just wondering who they one or two are. But it's good to have have that debate, because that's why you ban those journalists, saying, "Well, you're just printing out, stories, and you've not come to us first, to give us our point across." Those journalists could say, "Oh, we're hearing this. Can you just confirm or deny, or what is the story?" And I could say, "Well, we want to make a comment," or "We've got no comment to say about it." But for Ten Hag, it's just, I know he said in the past he wants United to be the ultimate transition team. And at points sometimes the players don't give the impression they know what they're doing. So it's just like the Newcastle games, highlighted as whether do we pass out from the back or do we do a long ball. It's just as Ten Hag said, we all want to play the perfect game, but sometimes you just can't. You have to slightly adapt to it. And with so many games, we've had and are coming up, sometimes you're not always going to get a good performance. Sometimes you just got to grind out the results. And I'm just thinking, it's like certain players, pressing other teams, like Newcastle game. Martial was, tasked with leading the line, and he didn't do it. He didn't really press. There's just no intensity from him. When Højlund came on, it was like, well, yeah, he's starting to be a nuisance, for those Newcastle players. So even though I'm liking it to the City game against Spurs, Son, he knew he wasn't going to get much of the ball during that game, but what he was going to do was going to run and put all the effort in, and just create a bit of a nuisance for them. And something comes of it, which Spurs did when they did get on the ball. But sort of use that example. But Højlund's definitely a much better player than Martial is. I know Højlund hasn't scored in the Premier League yet, but Martial, I know there's that nickname for him, was it Alternative MUFC's Mannequin Martial, but because he just doesn't, he's just I want to see more from Martial. I know you've got the talent, but show it. You just look so disinterested in. I know there was that moment in the first half where Ten Hag had started shouting instructions and Martial throwing his hands up in the air. I'm like, well, yes, you can have a disagreement with that, but he's telling you to try something, at least try it. And if it don't work, then you can go back to knowledge. Look, I've tried what you wanted, it doesn't work. Or if it does work, then yeah, you can praise the manager for making that change in the instruction as well. But I just think with Ten Hag, he's been there for like 18 months now, and I'm just thinking his style of play is it all over that side yet? I just don't think it is quite yet, and I know he's brought in players as what his own players as well. So, but it's just I think certain players still need to go and and whether you'll get all that the money for that from from January and the summer and for some Jim Radcliffe too as well. So it's just I'm backing the Ten Hag all the way. It's just the players have got to step up and be counted as well. And I'm hoping tomorrow night, they put the wrong of it, the result against Newcastle.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It is like so. I want to move on to one of my major frustrations with Ten Hag. I just want to know whether you agree it's an issue or don't agree it's an issue. I've put here in brackets. Do we think it could cost him his job? Because this is something I genuinely think is an issue. I just wanted to touch on Troy and saying good luck guys to us. I personally don't agree with this at all. I would never ever want Man United to lose a game of football to push a manager out. I saw people doing this with Solskjaer, and it absolutely
then the players aren't good enough. Then
it just baffles me.
I respect Troy. And you're welcome to have a disagreement with us, and that's perfectly fine. But I noticed your comment a few minutes ago when you said the players are good enough. But my response to that is good enough for what?
Because they've not shown a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you mean good enough to compete for the top honours, good enough for top four, good enough to challenge for, let's say, the lesser cups like League Cup, FA Cup, that kind of thing. When you say they're good enough, and that, so because I personally don't think our squad is miles off what City's squad is. We're not capable of doing what they're doing.
And in terms of value, it's not that far off Man City.
Exactly. Yeah, so I do personally think that I can see the frustration. And I'm increasingly annoyed by Ten Hag and that, by some of his selection. I'm not Ten Hag out because I don't think who do you bring in at this moment? That's the big issue for me. That's why I think it's more important that you get this structure in place and then identify philosophy of what style you want to play, and then bring players in accordingly to suit that style. And
which they've not done for any manager. Yeah, they've not done that for any manager, though, have they? So they've not identified a style and then backed him to play his style.
Like I say, we've had different managers with different styles, but we got about 70% of these players of. Let's not ignore Rangnick either. This is. Several of these players have played under 3, 4, maybe even 5 managers on the different styles, so it will confuse them. It will.
Yes. So we'll touch on. We'll move on a bit because we've been going 50 minutes already, incredibly. So my major issue with Ten Hag, and I genuinely think this is just my personal opinion, but I think this is going to cost him his job ultimately. And it's his stubbornness in certain areas of the game. He's very much playing players out of position because he believes in his philosophy that it can't work if he plays Maguire at left centre back. So we saw Luke Shaw come in to play left centre back against Newcastle. He's continued, even though Lindelof I don't think has played very well this season. He's constantly played him on the left side of defence. He'll prefer to play Evans on the left side of defence because these are all more. They're not left-footed. Well, Shaw is, but they're more naturally left-footed than Harry Maguire is, and he does it in other positions. Keeps playing Fernandes out of position. He'll play Rashford out of position instead of playing the best player for that position. So I'm just interested to know your thoughts, Andy, and your thoughts, John. If you think this is, if he keeps doing it, ultimately, could it cost him his job? Because this is what's frustrating me. So I'm seeing Luke Shaw, who is our best left back at the club, playing left centre back, when we've got Harry Maguire, who can play left centre back, who's banging form, playing right centre back, while Varane sat on the bench, who can play right centre back, while we've got two right backs in Dallo and Wan-Bissaka, who, again, both at fault for the Newcastle goal, by the way. Wan-Bissaka got away with that. Andy mentioned it briefly, but he got away with that on social media. He was bang at fault for it. And if it was Dallo, he'd have been crucified.
Well, Dallo did let the guy.
Yeah, he let the cross through. Yeah, but I mean, if he was on the
Yeah.
right side, he would. Yeah. So, do you think that he needs to sort of accept the squad's where it is and just get players in the right place that can play where they should play, Andy? Or do you think he's not going to? But do you think it's going to cost him?
See, Ten Hag's just get the stubbornness.
Very
like,
stubborn, yeah.
Even like last season when he kept playing the same 11, he was like, I get it, you want that consistency with the team, and will it cost him? It depends on the results go well in the next couple of weeks, because you know, say we've got Chelsea at home, then Bournemouth, then Bayern, and then the Liverpool away game. So it's just want to see something from the players too. You know, show some effort for the manager and the fans as well. And with Ten Hag, I'm just thinking. I think he said it were a team still in transition, and I almost feel like this season, the way it's gone, we should have probably had it in his first season, because we weren't expecting that much in Ten Hag's first season. But the way we played and got to 2 cup finals, won the League Cup, and then finished third, and I feel like we overachieved slightly in his first season. So it was just like, and the expectations has risen up. So it's almost like this season should have been last season. We should, having a better season now. But it's just Ten Hag, I think he's trying, with the team. But I just think he needs to get. I know he brought in his own players in already, but I think he just needs to still further rebuild that team as well. So to certain players, are they right for the right positions anyway, or was he thinking, or what he's seen in training, they can adapt to these positions? So maybe, let's say, it could be all going right in training, but somehow on the pitch it doesn't seem to be quite clicking. So I hope Ten Hag, stubbornness doesn't cost him, but I just think it's you can only tell the players so much, and they're the ones that got to go out on the pitch and say he can control so much what happens on the pitch, but he can't control everything that happens, So yeah, I'm saying I'm still back in Ten Hag. So, but just I'm just worried over the next couple of weeks what might happen. But when it seems United are like a bit down and out, we pull ourselves off and we just hit the ground running again. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but it's the frustration for me of, like I say, seeing Luke Shaw at left centre back when we've got players that can play there. I guess that he talks about passing angles, and he talks about
Luke Shaw's played left centre back before. I remember.
Yeah, he played last season and played all right, but I
remember years ago when he played. I think it was a back three, and he was the left centre back.
Yeah,
and that. Yeah.
But it's the frustration of losing Luke Shaw down the left hand side, because nobody's good enough to play there, and even surely start Reguilon instead of Dallo. Do you know an actual left back?
I think with Lindelof, I don't know, it's a few times in games like he's been clutching his back or been knocked in his back and he's been clutching it, and it's like Varane. It's an interesting one with Varane at the minute, because I just think, I don't know whether he probably feels like he's got a good few years left at United as well, but I'm just thinking, I think the stats are showing is like he's slowing down in certain areas, and just like he's not as quick on the ball. I'm just like, so I don't know whether Ten Hag's seen something in Varane that he doesn't want to put him in the side, and that's why Harry Maguire is now been given another chance, and he's
yeah.
well
I
and
think
truly
this is
taken it.
the frustrating thing for me is I get all that and I get all the noise surrounding that, but it very much looks like to me, and I might be wrong. This is just my opinion, that Varane is not playing as well as Maguire. So Maguire's starting at right centre back, and he will not play Varane at left centre back. So it's where he won't have the straight shootout with Garnacho and Rashford for the left. That seems to be what he's doing for the right centre back position. It's basically whoever out you two are in form are going to start, but I'm not going to adjust to put Maguire on the left and Varane on the right. Does that make sense? That's how that's how I'm perceiving it. I might be wrong.
And it'll be interesting when Martinez gets back from. I think it might be. I think it might be the new year. I thought it was going to be like maybe just before Christmas or just into the new year. We'd have him back. So that's what I read. But then it depends how long recovery is taking. But it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be Maguire and Martinez. But Martinez is mostly played with Varane. So it'll be interesting to see who Ten Hag favours when Martinez is back.
So what about you, John? Where do you stand? Do you think his stubbornness could cost him if you don't start putting?
I think so. And I think that he's, I get playing Shaw left centre half. He's done well there. Obviously at the start of the year and at the new camp and in the City game, which won 2-1. I remember when Solskjaer used to play with 5 at the back and he like the left centre back across the 3, so and he used to do well then. So, but for me, I think you need Shaw left back. And if you are going to play short left centre half, don't play Dalot at left back, please.
He did all right at Milan, but it's not.
Yeah, but
quality, is it?
But you got to look at maybe Regulon or something if you're going to play short left centre half. And but for me, I think it's a bit obscure. Then Varane used to play left centre half at Madrid. If I remember.
Did, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a bit puzzling, maybe. I know Maguire's moved across now, and obviously Lindelof, he's played left centre half and he's done okay there. So I can see why he isn't going with Varane, but I think it's all a bit confusing what's going on there, to be honest. So for me, I think you will need to try and play Varane in some games at some point. But having said that, we are defensively solid at the moment in the league, and it was a terrible performance, but we did concede 1, and we've only conceded 1 in the last 4 games in the league. So
I wanted to touch on that, John, while you've brought it up. So I've got the away record up that we can talk about a bit later, but it was the shots conceded in something like the last 6 games. 109 or something like that. It's madness.
Ridiculous.
And that to me is
that says more about the midfield.
Well, I had a little bit of debate earlier about who to blame. A lot of people are blaming Maguire because he's hiding from the ball, which the stats doesn't show. But to me, as a football man,
how can a defender hide from the ball?
So basically, we'll go into it a little bit. So I apologize, Mr. Howson, you told me off. So they were saying that it was Ashley Williams on Rio Ferdinand's podcast. So he was saying that Maguire was purposely running to where the defender was in the way to not receive the ball. But what he's doing is he's trying to open up the gap for the pass to go to Wan-Bissaka, because that is literally how Ten Hag likes to play. You push the defense up and then the wing backs bring the ball out, which is why the 3 players that are the most with ball carrying and ball progression are Evans, Onana, Maguire, and then Dalot. That's literally, there is no midfielder in sight in that. We spoke about it backstage, but in essence, it's. See, look, NT's done it here. I respect NT, but this is it. This is the exact problem, right? And you can't give me a single stat. Like, I love Maguire, by the way, so I'll defend him to high heavens. You can't give me a single stat that proves that we can't play with a high block, because under Solskjaer, Maguire played in a high block, and under Eth, we played with a lower block than we did under Solskjaer. So, we played better football with Solskjaer in the high block. It's easy to say it's Maguire's fault we can't play in a high block, but it's a choice. It's a manager's choice to be playing in a low block like that. But the point is, it's more, all these shots conceded are more to do with it's a team not working as a unit, not just a centre-back or a goalkeeper. It's the midfielders aren't working hard enough. Your wingers aren't tracking back well enough. There's too many overloads in positions. There's too much space in the centre of the park. Scott McTominay, and you've touched on this, John, quite a few times, he made 31 passes against Newcastle. 31. That is not enough to be playing midfield. There's no control there whatsoever. So the ball's just coming back constantly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. We'll move on to tomorrow. By the way, if no one's got any more points to add, if anyone got any more points to add on Maguire to be blamed or whatever else.
Yeah, but he's overrated.
Oh, get out, John.
He's just absolutely terrible. And yeah, man, I agree with NT. No, but
by the way, this is where I actually agree with NT. He hasn't got the pace.
Yeah.
But he can play in a high line as long as those he's playing with know how to play a high line. So Liverpool play a high line and they're constantly catching people offside.
Can I just also point out this thing about high line, pass out from the back and all that? Can I just make a point? Yep. Every team does it.
When did Luton score again?
Every team... It's people think it's like revolutionary. There are times where every team will play out from the back. There'll be times when teams will have a low block, every team, and there'll be time when teams will have a high line. Every team does it. The only difference is some teams play with a high line more than others because they control the game or control possession.
Yeah, Liverpool.
But every team does it. It's not like revolutionary.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the difference is that there will be times when Luton might press up when they have a ball today. You know, they've scored a couple of goals, haven't they, today against Arsenal? You know, there will be times where you press forward. Some will play on the counter-attack and sit back and that, but there'll be times where there's a time to step up, there's a time to drop back. But tactics is subtle and there are differences when it happens, but every team does it.
Yeah.
You know, every team does it from time to time, just some do it more than others.
I think the key word that he's used over and over again there, Andy, is team. It is as a team that they play the high line. It's as a team as they do the low block. We are in between. You can see where the player positions from Newcastle. I don't know whether any of you saw them, but the average position, there is a massive triangle gap in the middle of the pitch, and that is bad. For any team, it's bad. So we'll move on. Obviously, looking forward to tomorrow. In fact, before we move on, because I did want to discuss this, I just wanted to point out that this was put on Sky, and it is away results versus the top 9. And I don't know whether you boys have seen this, but it is horrific. We've lost 4-0 to Brentford, 6-3 to Man City, 3-1 to Aston Villa, 3-2 to Arsenal, 7-0 to Liverpool, 2-0 to Newcastle. We've drew 2-2 against Tottenham, and I distinctly remember that game. We was 2-0 up with about 15 minutes to go.
That's the only game we've not lost, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the only game we haven't lost. We lost 1-0 to Brighton, then 2-0 to Tottenham, 3-1 to Arsenal, and then that takes us to Saturday.
It's ironic. Tottenham
where we lost 1-0.
It's the only away game against top 7 or whatever. Tottenham's the one we haven't lost in that run, or be they lost. And it's also the last time that we won away against.
The last away win was Solskjaer.
Yeah, so
which is mental. And obviously, I don't know how Arsenal have equalised. It's 3-3 apparently. I don't know how you go from being completely unbeaten in the Premier League away from home in a season to this, because as we've said, it's the same players. So where's the mentality gone? I can remember us going behind away from home and going back to win. Do you know what I mean? Where's that mentality gone with the same players? It's I know a few are different, but it's mainly there's a big chunk of them that are the same. So where's the mentality disappeared to? So we'll move on. We'll look ahead to the Chelsea game. I've got a question for Mr. Wall first, and he knows I'm going to ask this because I pre-warned him backstage. So, A, the first question is, do you think the crowd is going to turn on the players before they turn on the manager? And B, are you expecting a hostile reception for any of them? Or do you think they'll back them to the hill unless it goes wrong?
In answer to A, well, I'll turn on the players first before Ten Hag. And like tomorrow night, before the game and start the game, we'll be backing the players and and the manager straight away. But if we're not seeing, just that effort on the pitch, and then, the gig will easily turn. So just like, so we want to make it a hostile environment for the Chelsea players and their fans more than anything. So, but yeah, if we're not God forbid we see the same performance that we did against Newcastle, then it will not be good for the players. So,
I've caught you there a little bit because you've just said it not be good for the players. So, do you think the crowd are more likely to boo the players than they are blame Ten Hag? It's so interesting because I know it's going to be so split.
Yeah, you caught me there. But I feel like the players, what to use those, if they're not performing and those boos are coming, we'll use that motivation and, just like, we'll show the fans what we're all about. We care. We're going to start scoring goals. We're going to take all 3 points against Chelsea. So just, we forgive United most things. If you put the effort in and, we've done well in the game, put a team performance in and we still ended up losing, we can go home. We'll go home happy. It's when, like the Newcastle game, if you put like that again against Old Trafford and we end up losing, like a performance like that, of course we're not going to be happy. So, but I'll be more angry at the players. I mean, say Ten Hag he can control so much, but he can't control everything on the pitch, as I said earlier. So you can give the instructions and say it's up to the players then to take those instructions and do the job and go forth with it. So, but it's going to be a good atmosphere tomorrow.
I genuinely can't wait to speak to you Thursday to see how it, like, or some of the other fans there feel, because I think the Old Trafford crowds, from talking to you, is really it's always backing the players. It's never overly harsh, even when Twitter's been overly harsh, etc. There's always that backing. Even Maguire got loads of backing for 99.9% of the time of the bad times. So I can't wait to see what you say has happened on Thursday. So John, we'll obviously move on to the Chelsea game. I'm interested to know what changes you would make, if any changes you would make. Do you think, obviously, we've not really spoke about, obviously, the stuff in the media in terms of the ban, etc. So we'll touch on that as well. Do you think there is any truth to he's lost 50% of the changing room? If he has lost 50% of the changing room, do you not think he then should drop those players if we know who they are for the game and send a message? Do you think he's brave enough to do that? I think we can all agree that it was nice to see some of the media banned today because they played fast and loose with the truth for quite a few weeks. And it was good to see the club actually justify it. I made the point of the Mason Greenwood thing. We try not to talk about it too much, but the Athletic did a massive piece on Mason Greenwood and how the club had handled it, etc. And nobody from the Athletic ever got kicked out of the club after that. It seemed it was done correctly. They went to the club. They said, we're going to print this. Have you got any comments you would like to make, etc.? And the club went, that's fine. We don't write. If you print it, you print it. You've got your sources, blah, blah, blah. It seems they didn't do that today. So I think most of us will agree. So obviously, what do you make of the media stuff? Do you think there's any truth in the that he's lost the players? And would you, if you was him, then drop the players for the Chelsea game? What would you do?
Has he lost 50% of the changing room?
It's a big percent.
Well, did Sky Sports do a referendum in the dressing room where they players put their papers in ballots and they counted the votes and that kind of thing? So
that'd be interesting, like a complaint box.
I don't believe much. There's very few people that I trust in the media. the only people I really take notice is like people like Henry Winter and
I like Ornstein. He's
yeah,
normally quite good. Yeah.
Ornstein and Andy Mitten, and people at the Athletic. They are fairly reputable, the Athletic, so I would trust them. I think Lucas. I don't want to speak ill of people, but I just think he's odious. I mean, this is the guy who I think in 2012 Fergie banned people from the press conference, and he compared him to Robert Mugabe.
He did, yeah. I saw the quotes today.
I just think it's. I mean, he's been deserving of a ban for a long time, and I think when he said all these media sources, I think there was a tweet that came out a few weeks back where they said that I used word with him, he doesn't have any sources. So for me, yeah, I think he's arrogant, and I think his approach was at His Royal Highness. I mean, he clearly thinks a lot of himself, doesn't he? But, I just think he needs... yes, I'd use stronger language, but to be honest, but for me, Lucas should never be allowed in the press conference again, in my opinion. I think he's a disgraceful and inverted commas journalist. I think he carries a chip on his shoulder every time, and I think that I will ban them indefinitely. And I think the reaction of the MEN has been pretty awful. They've said,
yeah, I saw the quote.
Clark down at Munich, and like when you think David Meek used to be there, I mean, what a fantastic journalist he was, and Samuel Lucas is worthy of Tyne's bootlace. But for me, anyway, it's I don't personally believe it, and I think the club have acted accordingly, and I think they've been quite clever where they've said you're perfectly entitled to put out a story, but surely before you put out a story, you should ask us as a club for a comment. And to me, it's clear that the club haven't been asked to comment on these stories. And I think that's why they banned them. And I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it might be in relation to after... I think it was Matt Smith that interviewed Ten Hag last week when he's like, "Oh, we like the price it," and I think even Ten Hag, I think that's where Ten Hag has probably said that I've had enough of them, and and unless these people say, and I've also said, right, well, perhaps you need to find out who the league has are. That's your job. Well, why don't you tell us? And until you tell us, you won't be back in. To quote Fergie. But for me, the squad won't be happy. I don't think the whole squad will be happy. I don't think that necessarily means they're all turning on the manager. I think some of them, like Sancho, probably won't mind a change of manager. But for me, it's more the whole institution, the club. It's not a nice place to be, the club. I think the players will probably be frustrated maybe at times with Ten Hag, but I don't think it will necessarily mean that they want him gone. I think the overarching situation at the club with the ownership and all that, I think that's having an effect on things. I think the general mood, Andy and I follow the women's team, it's been dysfunctional in the women's team as well. So for me, it's basic journalism. Yeah, you can write an article. Yeah, you can have your sources, but approach the club to comment, on these things. If you simply, and MEN said, we've had a close relationship with, but we're not on the payroll. But it's quite easy to say, we're going to run this story. We've gathered information. Do you wish to comment on it? And to me, it suggests that they haven't done that, and that it's just basic journalism, and they haven't done it, And for me, it's welcome what's happened today, and hopefully, until they apologise, hopefully they won't get back in. Whereas the team is dysfunctional, like we've said, and they need to get back in the swing of things. But it's all because of one loss at Newcastle. If we had we've done okay in the league, so all of a sudden one defeat and it's crisis again. So
it's Man United, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I personally think you will get a response tomorrow. I think the club, the players know a lot of those players have been there before, and I think they know. I personally agree with that. I don't think they'll turn on the players tomorrow night unless it's a really bad performance, and I don't think the manager's gone until the fans turn on him. I can't see the fans turning on him, so I personally think that he's safe for now. But I think that the players might have question marks, but they need to start performing to the level which we know that they're capable of, and start playing football and doing their job properly. Because I can't see Ten Hag. He might ask players to do certain jobs on the pitch, but I can't imagine he will. I know he says he's happy with the performance at Newcastle. It was close, he can't be happy.
No, he can't.
And he's protecting the players. He will be ripping shreds out of them, I'm sure. The change room, and I'm sure he won't be happy with Rashford's performance and Martial in particular, but he didn't speak about them. So for me, get your head down, lads, and start performing.
I think NT is spot on here. I think if you start to question the top four, and it is the sad reality of the Glazers, they'll start to question him. I've said a few times on the channel, as a fan, I would be happy if he implemented his changes that he wanted to make and he finished sixth, but we was playing the style of football that he wanted and the squad looked a bit harmonious and everything. I would prefer to see good football and has finished sixth than what we're seeing now and it being a struggle, because at least the manager's getting what he wants and he's going in the right direction. But as a fan base of a whole or the club of a whole, that probably isn't going to happen. Andy, what about you? Your quick thoughts on the media ban? And do you think he's lost the players, or do you think it's a bit of nothing? I mean, my personal opinion is, my reaction to it straight away was, well, if you don't want to be here because you don't like his methods, fuck off. But what's your opinion?
I'm like the same. I say, if you don't want to give everything for the football club, then why are you here? Go and find another club where you can have it easy. I'm just thinking, Ten Hag's right to ban those members of the media and just like printing, I would say, clickbait stories or printing stories without seeking a comment from United first. United have the right to say, look, we don't want to make a comment on this story, but go and print it. We're not going to say anything about it. So I think it's Ten Hag, fighting back a bit of that siege mentality. Like under Fergie, it's us against the world. So that's everyone's coming for us, but we'll fight you back even more. So yeah, definitely agree with him on the media ban as well. And just said, looking ahead at the Chelsea game, I just think he's got definitely a few choices to make in terms of positions tomorrow night. Whether he puts Rashford on the bench or not, I'm just thinking, given his perceived lack of effort during against Newcastle as well. So I definitely think we might. Well, definitely we'll see Højlund back in the side and Anthony as well for Martial and Rashford. So they'll be giving the nod. So, but yeah, it's just saying. Okay, we've not been helped by injuries so far this season, but like any other team as well. So, but I mean, before the Newcastle game, we sort of had a revival of sorts.
Mini revival.
Mini revival. We haven't lost in 5 of the 6 matches and kept 3 clean sheets before we went to Newcastle. So, but Ten Hag, if he's under no illusion, that the game against Newcastle was second best. The whole 90 minutes plus. But I think now we're down in 7th. 5 points below Villa in the for 4th place. We've only scored 16 goals, and it's just
-2 goal difference, I think, as well.
And it's the worst attacking, return for any top half team. And then I think 8 of those goals have only come at Old Trafford. So we're going to start scoring a bit more at Old Trafford as well, and just we've got to show a bit more grit and determination. So, our opposition Chelsea have shown as well. Sometimes you just got to dig in a little bit more and just at the moment you just ride out those results. Even if, I would say at the moment the wins are the most important. The performances will come later. So it's just we just got to just find a way to win at any cost at the minute.
Yeah, this is a frustrating thing for me looking across at Chelsea because I think they're doing what I'm sort of suggesting. They've spent a load of money. It's not worked out, so they've settled to a team that might not win every single week, but it's going in the direction that Pochettino wants. So within 2 years, we're probably going to be saying, "Well, that's worked well because they've set themselves on a path they wanted to go."
And it's been a bit up and down for them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And I just think looking at like Spurs as well, like Postecoglou and saying his ways, like because there was like questioning his style of play and his tactics, saying it's just one way, and he says, "Well, that's my philosophy. I'm not going to.
If it works,
yeah, I'm not going to change it." And okay, before the City game, they drew 3-3. They'd lost 3 on the bounce, but he wasn't going to change his way. A bit like Ten Hag, stubbornness is like I say, all teams played the same way. It's just going to be like it'd be a very boring old game. So, but yeah, I just think it depends what Chelsea side turn up tomorrow as well.
there's about 15 that could, and I'm just talking about the amount of players they've got. So,
and amazing in terms of the performance they give as well, because they've been like us up and down. Like,
well, we know that Gallagher's not fit because, sorry, he's not going to be there because he's sent off.
Yeah. James, is he? Because
I think it was just a one match ban, so he should be back. Yeah.
Right.
So what about you, John? What would you change? And then we'll end it after that.
I'd go with. I'll put Luke Shaw back at left back. I mean, I will probably play Varane, but I'd probably go with Lindelof. And I'll play Anthony instead of Rashford, and I will personally bring Amrabat in for McTominay, but I don't think he will. So, or at least if Amrabat comes, he'll be in place of Mainu, I think. So I will personally make about 4 changes.
Would you go with Amrabat, Mainu, and Fernandes then as your 3?
That would be my preference, yeah. But
I can see what you mean for the balance.
I personally think he'll rest Mainu and start Amrabat, and I think I can see him starting Rashford. But I will probably start with Anthony.
So just on your defence, John, because you said Luke Shaw left back and then probably Lindelof. I presume you're going to go Maguire. So who are you putting at right back? Delo or Wan-Bissaka?
Oh, Wan-Bissaka.
So I just thought who would get the nod on that one.
Yeah, well, I think
it's got to be Wan-Bissaka at the minute for me. I mean, he was at fault for the goal as well as Dalot.
I mean, he was. I mean, I think Wan-Bissaka hasn't. You can tell he's come back from injury because
I think Wan-Bissaka and Anthony have got a really good.
Yeah, rapport. So I think I will probably go with Wan-Bissaka still with whoever they play on the left, maybe Roderick or someone. I think Delot's just. I wouldn't trust him at all, so I will go Wan-Bissaka.
I've just caught some eye on my eye in this Arsenal game, and it very much looks like they're going to get a penalty for a pull.
Who?
Oh, they've not give it.
Ooh.
Arsenal. It looked like he was tugging on his arm. We gave one away for that not long ago against Man City.
There was a penalty given recently for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it looked like it to me. Anyway, so I mean, it's going to be interesting. We're going to be back on Thursday, I believe, for a reaction to obviously the Chelsea game. If there's anything else leaked in the press before then, I'm just so interested to see how the crowd reacts to the team, the manager, and everything after all this. I've no doubt that
it'll probably be an entertaining game.
Honestly, I would take a 5-5, just a bit. Honestly, we don't even have to win, but go out, put in a solid effort, like you're trying your very best, etc. NT's gone for an honour.
We have to win. Make a statement. Let's make a statement.
So the only thing NT would change is Martial and Mainu.
Yeah. He's got Amrabat and McTominay. Yeah.
I've got to be honest.
No, he what about Garnacho not starting?
Oh yeah, Garnacho.
So I'd assume he'll play Rashford on the left then.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if you're going to start Rashford, I will bang my head against the wall tomorrow night. If Rashford's starting on the right, I will just bang my head against the wall, and hopefully
because
it puts me to sleep and I miss the game.
If he plays him on the right, you're playing with 10 men, and if you play McTominay,
Okay,
you're playing with...
that's not his desired, but he's predicted. So that's what I think Ten Hag's going to go with. Honestly, I would not argue with what he's put there. If that's what he's saying that Ten Hag's going to go for, I would not argue with that at all. I think he may be spot on. I wouldn't change loads. I would probably take McTominay out for Amrabat. I would start Kobe Minu, and I would not play Rashford on the right hand side. I'd play Anthony, and then I would not play Dalot at left back. I'd put Shaw out. I would play Maguire and Varane. I would just play Maguire on the left, but I genuinely think he's too stubborn to not have someone comfortable on the left foot on that side. The faster Martinez is back, the better for everybody.
If he is going to play Shaw there, you got to play Regulon at left back.
Yeah. I mean, he's fully fit now. He's got to be fully fit now.
Who?
Regulon.
Yeah,
I know he was injured and he was on the bench the other day.
He came on.
Yeah. So he's got to be fit enough to start. Is what I'm saying.
In fairness, he did okay when he came on against Newcastle. So
I'll be honest, I missed the game because it was my work's party. I sort of had it on the table and I was paying a little bits of attention to it, but it was not good. I should have just not put it on in general, to be honest, and watched it when I got home. So yeah, we'll call it quits there. I feel like we've got through quite a lot. We've been going nearly an hour and a half, which is absolutely mad. I'm just checking that I've got for everything on my little list here, so we don't miss anything out. I'm pretty much I've got through everything. I'll just quote what Ten Hag said about the media ban. And he basically said they should have come to us first and not go behind our back printing articles. That is not the right thing. We have a good relationship. They come to us beforehand. We have a debate about it. So I think the club and Ten Hag has been very, very clear what they did. And that's why they've been banned. I mean, I am fully agreed with you about...
you can imagine him saying it in his Dutch accent.
I can't, in his stern Dutch accent. Right, so we'll call it quits there. Thank you for all the comments, everybody joining in. It's been a cracking show again. I can't wait to come back on Thursday, to be honest. I'm just hoping we can be a little bit more positive, and I'm hoping we see the Old Trafford crowd absolutely backing the boys come tomorrow. Is it 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock tomorrow, the game?
No,
8:15.
8:15. I'll tell you what, we haven't done score predictions. Quickly, score predictions. John.
3-2 United.
Oh, I love it. Andy.
1-0 United.
Oh, I don't like it. I want goals.
Yes. I just think it's...
We just don't score them. But yeah.
I just think, as I said back there, I said it's either going to be a very open game or a very tight game where no one either team wants to lose.
Yeah.
And so I think it could be 1-0 to us.
I think the thing is with because midweek Premier League games, you tend to get some obscure results like losing Arsenal, CNC, and but I think the way Chelsea, you saw in the City 4-4 and the Tottenham game, like they will create chances, but they'll also, I can see it being an end-to-end game. So I think it's like that last game we had under Carrick against Arsenal and won 3-2, and I can see it being a similar game to that.
That Michael Carrick that was completely unbeaten as Man United manager. Just going to throw that in there. I think it's going to be 2-1 Man United. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. Højlund with the winner. First goal. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm sticking to. Right. It's been a pleasure. So we'll see you on the next one, which will be Thursday.